My family mocked me when I set boundaries, then they removed me from the family chat and started calling me selfish. It's weird how a family can feel like the loneliest place in the world. For me, it's been that way for as long as I can remember. I'm Amelia, 34 years old, and the one who's always been on the outside looking in. My older brother, Jacob, is a 41-year-old hotshot IT executive, married with 2 perfect kids and a sprawling suburban house. My sister, Olivia, 38, is no different. A high-powered lawyer with a designer wardrobe, a husband who could moonlight as a model, and twins who look like they stepped out of a Baby Gap ad. And then there's me. 4 years ago, I walked away from a 6-figure corporate job to chase a dream, starting my own business. Everyone thought I was insane, but I was tired of living their version of success. I moved into a modest rental home with my fiancé, Liam, who's been my biggest cheerleader through it all. Sure, we don't have a white picket fence or 401 Burmese chots bursting at the seams, but we're happy. At least, I thought we were until last Christmas. The night started like every other family holiday. Mom bustling around the kitchen, Dad barking at the TV, and Jacob and Olivia comparing notes on their latest successes. I was already bracing myself for the barrage of passive-aggressive comments when Jacob turned to me with his signature smirk. "So, Amelia, how's the little business going? Still breaking even?" he asked, dripping with condescension. I felt the usual sting but plastered on a smile. "Actually, we've seen some solid growth this year. We landed 2 big clients and—" "Good for you," Olivia cut in, flashing her perfect white teeth. "But you know, stability is important, especially if you're thinking of having kids someday." Mom chimed in then, her voice sugary sweet. "Oh, Olivia, Amelia doesn't have time for kids. She's too busy reinventing the wheel." The room erupted in polite laughter, but I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Even Liam looked uncomfortable. He squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support, but I was already unraveling inside. After dinner, I couldn't hold it in anymore. As soon as the dishes were cleared, I cornered Mom in the kitchen. "Why do you always do this?" I demanded. "Do what?" she asked innocently, not even looking up from the sink where she was rinsing the plates. "You always have to make little digs. Like my life isn't good enough. Like I'm not good enough." Mom turned then, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Amelia, no one's saying you're not good enough. But let's be honest, you've made some unconventional choices. We just want what's best for you. What's best for me or what's best for you." My voice was rising now, and I could feel tears pricking the corners of my eyes. "Because I don't think you've ever cared about what I want." She sighed and shook her head, as if I were some petulant child. "You're being dramatic." By then, Olivia had wandered into the kitchen, drawn by the commotion. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Mom said quickly, but I wasn't about to let it go. "Oh, it's just another round of, let's remind Amelia how much of a failure she is," I snapped. Olivia rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Amelia. No one thinks you're a failure. But maybe if you weren't so sensitive all the time." That was it. I stormed out of the kitchen and straight into the cold night air. Liam followed a few seconds later, wrapping his coat around me as I paced in the driveway. "I'm done, Liam," I said, my voice shaking. "I can't keep doing this." He didn't say anything, just pulled me into a hug. And for a moment, I felt safe. But the anger was still bubbling under the surface. The next morning, I woke up to find a text from Jacob. It was short but cutting. "Amelia, you embarrassed yourself last night. You owe Mom an apology." I stared at my phone, my hands trembling with rage. An apology? After everything they'd said to me? I tossed the phone aside and buried my face in my hands. Liam found me like that a little while later. "You okay?" "No," I admitted. "I'm not. I can't keep pretending like this doesn't bother me." He sat down beside me, his expression serious. "Then don't. Maybe it's time to set some boundaries." The word hit me like a bolt of lightning. Boundaries. I'd spent my entire life bending over backward to fit into a family that didn't seem to care about me. Maybe it was time to stop. That night, I sat down and wrote a long email to my family. I poured out everything I'd been holding inside for years, the hurt, the frustration, the sense of being an outsider. I told them that I loved them, but I couldn't keep subjecting myself to their criticism. If they couldn't accept me for who I was, then maybe it was time to take a step back. I hit send before I could overthink it and then collapsed into Liam's arms, exhausted but oddly relieved. The fallout was immediate. Jacob called me within an hour, furious. "What the hell, Amelia? You're just going to walk away from your family?" "Not walk away," I corrected. "Just take a break." Olivia sent a scathing reply, accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. Mom called, crying, begging me to reconsider. But for the first time in my life, I stood firm. Over the next few weeks, the silence was deafening. No more family group chats. No more invitations to dinner. It was hard, but it was also liberating. For the first time, I felt like I was living my life on my terms. But just when I thought things were starting to settle, an unexpected bombshell rocked my world. Liam came home one evening, his face pale, holding an envelope. It was addressed to both of us, but the sender's name made my stomach drop, Olivia. I tore it open and scanned the contents, my heart pounding. Inside was a letter accusing Liam of something unthinkable, a betrayal that could shatter everything we'd built together. I turned to him, my hands shaking. What the hell is this? He looked as stunned as I felt. Amelia, I swear, I have no idea what this is about. But the doubt had already been planted. My family had found a new way to pull me back into their web of chaos, and this time, they might succeed. It all started when I was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram one evening. Liam was on the couch beside me, absorbed in a documentary about deep-sea creatures. My thumb froze over the screen when I saw it, a post from my cousin Hannah. She was beaming in the center of a group photo, surrounded by my entire extended family. The caption read, "Family comes first. Love these people so much. Family party." The background looked familiar. It was my Aunt Diane's house, the place where we had always gathered for big celebrations when I was younger. It hit me like a punch to the stomach. There was my brother Jacob, standing next to Olivia, their families perfectly styled as always. Even Aunt Diane's notoriously camera-shy cat had managed to make an appearance in the corner of the frame. Everyone was there, except me. I stared at the photo for what felt like forever. The longer I looked, the more the hurt twisted into anger. Liam must have noticed something was wrong because he muted the TV and leaned closer. Amelia, what's wrong? I turned the phone toward him without a word. He squinted at the screen, then frowned. Is that your family? I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. It's a family party. Apparently, everyone was invited but me. Liam's expression darkened. Did they even tell you about it? No, I said bitterly. Not a word. The next morning, I decided to confront my mom. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I needed answers. I called her, pacing the length of our small living room as the phone rang. She picked up on the third ring, her tone chipper as always. Hi, Amelia. How are you? Hi, Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I was just wondering, was there a family party at Aunt Diane's yesterday? There was a pause, just long enough for the tension to build. Oh, that, she said finally, her voice taking on that overly casual tone she used when she knew she was caught. Yes, there was a little get-together. A little get-together? I repeated, my voice sharpening. It looked like the whole family was there. Well, yes, but I didn't think you'd want to come, she said quickly. You've been so busy with your business, and I didn't want to bother you. Not want to bother me? I echoed, feeling the anger rising in my chest. Mom, do you have any idea how it feels to see my entire family together on Instagram and realize I wasn't even invited? Oh, Amelia, don't be so dramatic, she said, brushing me off. It wasn't a big deal. Just a casual thing. It clearly wasn't casual, I shot back. Jacob and Olivia were there, along with their kids and even people I barely talk to anymore. But I'm too busy to be included. She sighed, and I could hear her impatience over the phone. Amelia, I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought you'd prefer to focus on your business. You've been so distant lately, always doing your own thing. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Distant? I repeated, my voice shaking. Maybe I wouldn't feel so distant if I wasn't constantly excluded from things like this. Amelia, she said, her voice softening in that infuriatingly patronizing way. You're overreacting. Let's not turn this into a big issue. But it was a big issue, at least to me. After I hung up, I sat on the couch staring at the wall, feeling a mix of sadness and rage. Liam sat beside me, his hand on my knee. You okay? No, I admitted. I don't even know why I keep trying with them. He didn't say anything, just pulled me into a hug. But the silence felt heavier than usual, like the weight of my family's indifference was pressing down on both of us. A few days later, I got a text from Hannah. Hey, Amelia. Just wanted to say sorry you couldn't make it to the party. We missed you. I stared at the message, my jaw tightening. Missed me? They didn't even tell me about it. For a moment, I considered responding, but what was the point? Instead, I turned off my phone and threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the growing rift between me and my family. But the hurt didn't fade. It festered, eating away at me every time I saw another photo or post from one of them. Jacob bragging about his latest promotion. Olivia posting pictures of her perfect family vacations. Mom commenting on every single one, showering them with praise while I got silence. It all came to a head a few weeks later when Aunt Diane called me out of the blue. "Amelia, I just wanted to check in. I heard you were upset about missing the party." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I wasn't upset about missing it, Aunt Diane. I was upset that no one told me about it." "Oh, sweetheart, I thought Susan, your mom, was going to invite you," she said, sounding genuinely surprised. "She told me she'd handle it." "Well, she didn't," I said bluntly. "And now I'm the one who looks like I didn't care enough to show up." Diane hesitated, then said, "I'm sorry, Amelia. I had no idea. If I'd known, I would have called you myself." I thanked her, but the damage was already done. It wasn't just about the party, it was about the pattern. My family had always treated me like an afterthought, and no amount of apologies or excuses could change that. When I told Liam about the call, he nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe it's time to stop chasing their approval," he said. "Focus on the people who actually care about you." He was right, of course, but it wasn't that simple. No matter how much I tried to distance myself, the longing for their acceptance lingered, like an old wound that refused to heal. And as much as I wanted to move on, a part of me couldn't let go of the hope that someday, things might be different. After days of stewing in my anger and hurt, I decided I wasn't going to let my family brush me off anymore. The family party wasn't some casual gathering, as my mom had tried to frame it. It was a significant event, one where everyone else had clearly been invited. If they thought they could push me to the sidelines again, they were about to find out how wrong they were. I spent the entire night baking. Muffins were Zach's favorite thing I made, and I thought bringing a batch of them to the party would make a good statement. Something about walking in, uninvited, with homemade baked goods felt like a quiet way to reclaim some power. It was defiance wrapped in warmth. By the time I'd packed up a large box of perfectly golden muffins the next morning, I was running on caffeine and determination. Zach tried to talk me out of it, not because he thought I shouldn't go, but because he worried about how it would make me feel if they reacted poorly. "Amelia, are you sure this is the right way to handle it?" he asked, leaning against the counter while I zipped up my coat. His concern softened his voice, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. "Yes," I said firmly. "If I wait for an invitation, I'll be waiting forever. I'm done letting them decide where I belong." He nodded, pulling me in for a quick hug. "Okay, but call me if you need me, okay? I'll be ready to back you up." I kissed him on the cheek. "I'll be fine." The drive to Aunt Diane's house felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. My stomach churned, and my hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. What if they turned me away at the door? What if they laughed when I told them about the engagement? I kept trying to push the thoughts away, but they crept in, nagging at the edges of my resolve. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw the same cars from the Instagram post parked in neat rows. It was a bright, sunny day, but I felt a storm brewing inside me. With the box of muffins in hand, I took a deep breath and headed for the front door. The muffled sound of laughter and music drifted through the house as I rang the doorbell. It took a moment before someone answered. It was Aunt Diane, her face lighting up with surprise when she saw me. "Amelia, I didn't know you were coming," she said, her tone a mix of genuine warmth and uncertainty. "Hi, Aunt Diane. I thought I'd stop by," I said, forcing a smile. "I brought muffins." She glanced at the box in my hands, then back at me, clearly unsure how to react. "Well, come on in," she said finally, stepping aside to let me through. The moment I walked into the living room, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, and all eyes turned to me. Jacob and Olivia were seated near the fireplace, their kids playing on the floor. Mom was in the kitchen with a glass of wine in hand, and Dad was stationed near the TV as usual. Everyone stared at me like I just crashed a wedding in a clown costume. "Amelia," Mom said, setting her glass down and walking over. "What are you doing here?" "I heard about the party," I said, keeping my voice steady. "And I thought it would be nice to see everyone. I brought muffins." She looked at the box like it was a ticking time bomb. "You didn't need to go through all that trouble." "It wasn't any trouble," I said, my smile tightening. "Besides, I have something I wanted to share with everyone." A ripple of whispers passed through the room. Jacob exchanged a glance with Olivia, who smirked as if she already knew where this was going. I ignored them and set the box of muffins down on the coffee table before turning to face the group. "I'm engaged," I announced, my voice louder than I intended. Zach and I are getting married. The room fell silent for a moment, the kind of silence that feels like it's pressing down on your chest. Then, Jacob let out a low whistle, leaning back in his chair. Wow, didn't see that coming. Congratulations, Olivia said, though her tone was so flat it sounded more like an insult than a compliment. Mom's smile was strained as she stepped forward. That's lovely, Amelia. When did this happen? Last week, I said, meeting her gaze. We've been together for 7 years, and we decided it was time. Well, isn't that exciting, she said, her voice a little too chipper. We'll have to plan something to celebrate. The awkwardness in the room was palpable. I could see the forced smiles, hear the unspoken judgments in the way some of them murmured their congratulations. But I refused to let it bother me. I was here to stand my ground, to remind them that I wasn't going to let them keep sidelining me. As the party went on, the tension slowly eased, though I could feel the undercurrent of disapproval from certain family members. Jacob made a few snide remarks about how long Zach and I had been together without getting engaged sooner, and Olivia couldn't resist asking pointed questions about whether we could afford a wedding on my small business budget. I answered each one with as much grace as I could muster, refusing to let them get under my skin. At one point, Aunt Diane pulled me aside in the kitchen. I'm glad you came, she said, her tone sincere. You have every right to be here. Thanks, Aunt Diane, I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. I just wish the rest of the family felt the same way. They'll come around, she said, patting my hand. Give them time. As the party wound down, I found myself standing alone near the dessert table, watching the rest of the family mingle. It still hurt, seeing how easily they seemed to brush me aside, but I felt a sense of pride too. I had come, uninvited, and faced them head-on. I had announced my engagement on my terms, not theirs. When I finally left, box of muffins nearly empty, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. I had stood up for myself, and even if it hadn't gone perfectly, it was a step in the right direction. As I drove home, the sun dipping low on the horizon, I couldn't help but feel like something had shifted, not with my family, but within me. For the first time, I felt like I had taken control of my own narrative, and that was worth more than their approval ever could be. I wasn't sure what to expect when I walked into Aunt Diane's house that day. The party had already started, and I could hear the hum of conversation and laughter from the driveway. I took a deep breath, adjusted the engagement ring on my finger, and stepped inside, clutching a bottle of wine Zach had suggested I bring as a peace offering of sorts. The living room was packed. Jacob was sitting in an oversized armchair, holding a glass of scotch, his usual smug expression in place. Olivia was at the center of a small group near the fireplace, her voice cutting through the chatter as she recounted some story about her latest legal victory. Mom was perched on the couch, laughing at something Aunt Diane had just said, while Dad stood by the TV, flipping through channels as if he'd rather be anywhere else. As soon as I walked in, the energy in the room shifted. Conversations dropped off, and heads turned. For a moment, I felt like a spotlight was shining on me, and not in a good way. Amelia, Mom said, her tone carefully neutral. You made it. I did, I said, forcing a smile. Hi, everyone. There were murmurs of acknowledgement, but no one got up to greet me. I scanned the room for a friendly face and spotted Hannah near the kitchen. She waved me over, and I gratefully joined her, trying to shake off the cold reception. I'm glad you came, Hannah said, her voice low. It's been a little tense around here. Really? I asked, though I wasn't surprised. She nodded, glancing toward the living room. You know how they get. Olivia's been holding court all afternoon, and Jacob's already on his third drink. Brace yourself. I sighed but thanked her for the warning. It wasn't long before the main event of the day unfolded. Olivia clinked her glass to get everyone's attention, her husband Mark standing dutifully by her side. Everyone, she began, her voice brimming with excitement. Mark and I have some wonderful news to share. The room fell silent, all eyes on her. She smiled, basking in the attention. We're expecting, she announced, her hand resting on her stomach. Baby number 3 is on the way. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Cheers erupted, and everyone crowded around Olivia to offer their congratulations. Mom practically jumped out of her seat to hug her, and Jacob clapped Mark on the back, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Even Dad cracked a rare smile. I stayed on the fringes, watching the scene unfold. It wasn't that I wasn't happy for Olivia. I was. But the contrast between the warmth she received and the icy reception I'd gotten when I walked in wasn't lost on me. After the excitement died down a bit, I decided it was my turn. I stepped forward, clearing my throat to get their attention. Actually, I said, my voice shaking slightly, I have some news too. The room quieted, but the energy was different. The excitement that had filled the air moments ago was replaced with something colder, almost wary. Zach and I are engaged, I announced, holding up my hand to show them the ring. There was a brief pause, just long enough for the silence to sting, before Mom forced a smile and said, "Well, that's nice, Amelia. Congratulations." "Thanks," I said, though her lukewarm response didn't feel much like a celebration. Jacob, of course, couldn't resist making a comment. He leaned back in his chair, swirling his drink. "You sure have a way of timing things, don't you? What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "Oh, come on," he said, smirking. "Olivia announces her pregnancy, and suddenly you're engaged? You always want to be the center of attention." "That's not true," I shot back, my cheeks burning. "Jacob," Hannah said, trying to intervene, but he waved her off. "Don't act like I'm the bad guy here," he said. "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking." "Jacob, that's enough," Aunt Diane said, but her voice was drowned out by Mom, who decided to chime in. "Amelia," she said, her tone dripping with exasperation, "maybe this wasn't the right time to make your announcement." "The right time?" I repeated, incredulous. "Are you serious? I'm not allowed to share my engagement because Olivia decided to have another baby." "Don't make this about you," Olivia said, crossing her arms. "This was supposed to be a happy day. And it still can be," I said, struggling to keep my composure. "Why does it have to be one or the other?" "Because you always turn everything into drama," Jacob muttered, earning a few nods from others in the room. That was the breaking point. I turned to Mom, hoping for some kind of support, but she just looked tired. "Amelia, don't be a drama queen," Dad said from his corner of the room, barely looking up from the TV. "Why don't you just sit down and let everyone enjoy the party?" I stared at him, stunned. The dismissal, the complete lack of acknowledgement. It was too much. "I don't have to stay here and take this," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "Here we go," Jacob said, rolling his eyes. Storming out, as usual. "I'm done," I said, grabbing my bag. "Congratulations, Olivia. I hope your baby is everything you've ever wanted. But I won't stand here and let you all tear me down anymore." No one tried to stop me as I walked to the door. The only sound was the click of my heels against the hardwood floor and the faint murmur of whispers behind me. As I stepped outside, the cool evening air hit me, and I felt the weight of everything crash down. My hands were shaking, and tears blurred my vision, but I kept walking, determined not to let them see how much they'd hurt me. When I got to my car, I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel and trying to steady my breathing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Zach. "How did it go?" he asked when I picked up. "It didn't," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, Amelia," he said softly. "Come home. We'll figure it out together." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me, and started the car. As I drove away, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for the family I'd always wanted but never really had, and relief that I was finally done trying to earn their approval. For the first time in years, I felt free. The day started off innocently enough. I was sitting at the dining table with Zach, sipping coffee and going through emails, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Hannah. Normally, I loved hearing from her. She was one of the few family members who seemed genuinely supportive of me. But as soon as I saw the message preview, my stomach dropped. "Amelia," it read, "I need you to see this. I don't know if I should be sending it, but I think you have a right to know." I opened the message, and there they were, screenshots from the family group chat. My heart pounded as I scrolled through them. At first, it was just the usual chatter. Olivia talking about her pregnancy cravings, Jacob joking about Dad falling asleep during their last barbecue. But then I saw Mom's message. Why invite her? She will only ruin the evening with her stories about business and engagement. My chest tightened as I read it over and over, the words blurring together. Mom, the person who was supposed to love and support me unconditionally, had been plotting to exclude me from family events and dismissing my life in such a cruel, casual way. The other messages didn't help either. Olivia had chimed in with a laughing emoji, followed by, "She always makes it about herself anyway." Jacob, ever the charmer, had added, "It's not like she'd contribute anything useful." I couldn't believe it. No one had defended me. Not even Aunt Diane, who had always been the mediator of our family, had said a word. The chat went on for several messages, and not one person had pushed back against what was being said about me. Are you okay? Zach asked, noticing the tears rolling down my cheeks. I turned the phone toward him, and his face darkened as he read the messages. This is disgusting, he said. You don't deserve this, Amelia. I nodded, unable to speak. My mind was racing. For years, I had tried to tell myself that my family's indifference was unintentional, that they didn't mean to hurt me. But now, staring at those messages, I couldn't deny the truth. They didn't just overlook me, they actively dismissed and mocked me. Hannah sent another message. I'm so sorry. I didn't know they were saying these things until now. Please don't hate me for sharing. I quickly typed back, thank you for telling me. You did the right thing. But now I was left with a decision. What was I supposed to do with this information? Ignore it? Confront my mom privately? Or was it time to finally let the rest of the family see what was happening behind the scenes? Zach, as usual, was my voice of reason. You need to do whatever makes you feel like you've taken back some control, he said. If that means calling them out, then do it. If it means cutting them off, then that's okay too. But don't let them keep walking all over you. I thought about it for a long time. By the time I made my decision, my hands were steady, but my heart was racing. I opened the family group chat, the very same one where they'd been tearing me apart, and uploaded the screenshots Hannah had sent me. No caption, no explanation, just the raw truth, laid bare for everyone to see. It didn't take long for the responses to start rolling in. First came Jacob. What the hell, Amelia? Why would you post something like this? Then Olivia. Wow, way to be dramatic. Do you really think this is the way to handle things? Even Aunt Diane, who had stayed quiet in the original chat, sent a message. Amelia, I think this is something you should have discussed privately with your mom. Privately? Like they had kept their insults about me private? I was seething. Then Mom finally responded. Amelia, this is incredibly hurtful. I can't believe you would try to humiliate me like this in front of the whole family. Humiliate her? My jaw dropped. The sheer audacity of it was almost laughable. I quickly typed a response. Humiliate you? I wasn't the one mocking my own child in a family chat. If you're embarrassed, it's because of your own actions. The chat exploded after that. Jacob accused me of being selfish. Olivia called me a drama queen. And even Dad chimed in, telling me to grow up and stop airing dirty laundry. Not a single person apologized for what had been said in those messages. Not one. It was Hannah who finally broke through the noise. Everyone needs to stop attacking Amelia. What's hurtful is what was said in those screenshots. Instead of blaming her for sharing them, maybe we should take responsibility for the way we've treated her. Her message silenced the chat for a few minutes. I stared at the screen, waiting for someone to acknowledge her point, to admit they'd been wrong. But instead, Mom sent another message. This is just so typical of Amelia. Always playing the victim. I felt something inside me snap. I realized I wasn't going to get the validation or apology I wanted. These people, my own family, were never going to see me as anything other than the black sheep, the outsider, the scapegoat for their own dysfunction. Zach was watching me closely. You don't have to keep putting up with this, he said gently. You deserve better than this. He was right. I typed one final message in the chat. I'm done. I've tried for years to be part of this family, but it's clear I'm not wanted. You don't have to worry about me ruining any more of your evenings. Goodbye. Then I left the chat, deleted it entirely. It felt like cutting a cord that had been choking me for years. In the days that followed, I didn't hear from most of them. Hannah reached out to check on me, apologizing again for the way the family had reacted. Aunt Diane sent a half-hearted text about hoping we could all move past this. But that was it. The rest of them carried on as if I had never been part of their lives. It hurt, more than I wanted to admit. But there was also a sense of relief in finally letting go. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. Zach was my rock through it all, reminding me every day that I was more than enough, that I didn't need their approval to be happy. And he was right. My family might never change, but I didn't have to keep subjecting myself to their toxicity. I had my own life to live, and for the first time, I felt free to live it on my terms. After leaving the family chat for good, I spent the first few days feeling a strange combination of liberation and grief. It was as if I had cut away a piece of myself, a piece that had been rotting for years but was still hard to let go. Zach was my anchor through it all, patient and understanding. But even his comforting words couldn't completely erase the ache in my chest. Olivia was the first to reach out, unsurprisingly. She called me late one evening, and I didn't even have to check the caller ID to know it was her. Her persistence had always been her most irritating trait. I let it ring until it stopped, but then she started texting. Amelia, pick up. Why are you being so dramatic? You're blowing this way out of proportion. Just unblock Mom, and we can fix this. Her words made my stomach churn. Fix this? She was acting as if the years of insults, exclusion, and betrayal could be swept under the rug with a single apology, one I hadn't even received. I stared at her text for a long time before finally blocking her number. It felt good, empowering, even. One less voice in the chorus of criticism I'd endured for years. But it also brought a sense of finality that was hard to ignore. A few days later, I got an email from my father. It was short and surprisingly direct, which was unusual for him. Amelia, I've been thinking a lot about what happened and what was said in the family chat. I want to apologize. I know I haven't always been the father you needed me to be, and I deeply regret the things I said to you that day. You have every right to feel hurt. I can't change the past, but I want to try to make things right. Please let me know if we can talk. Love, Dad. I stared at the email for what felt like an eternity. It was the first genuine apology I'd ever received from anyone in my family, and it hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to believe he was sincere, but the scars from years of neglect and criticism made me wary. Could I trust him? Or was this just another attempt to pull me back into the toxic dynamics I'd finally escaped? Before I could decide what to do, another email came through. This one was from my mom. Amelia, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish by cutting us off like this, but it's childish and selfish. Do you realize what you're doing to this family? You're tearing us apart. We've always done our best for you, but you insist on playing the victim. Maybe it's time to take a good look in the mirror and ask yourself why you're so determined to destroy the people who love you. Your father might be willing to grovel, but I won't. You need to grow up and stop acting like the world revolves around you. Mom. If Dad's email had been a spark of hope, Mom's was a bucket of ice water. The anger in her words was almost palpable, and it confirmed everything I'd feared. She didn't see the problem. To her, I wasn't a daughter with valid feelings. I was just an obstacle, a complication in her carefully curated version of our family. I didn't respond to either email. I couldn't. The emotional whiplash left me drained, and I spent the rest of the day curled up on the couch, letting Zach hold me while I tried to process it all. A week later, the first real shock came. Hannah called me in a panic, her voice trembling as she told me that Mom had been calling everyone in the family, telling them I was mentally unstable. She's saying you're going through some kind of breakdown, Hannah said. That you're making all of this up to get attention. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Why would she do that? I asked, my voice shaking. I don't know, Hannah admitted, but she's trying to turn everyone against you. I thought you should know. I thanked her, but the damage was already done. Over the next few days, I received messages from cousins, aunts, and even distant relatives, all echoing the same sentiment. Why are you causing so much trouble? Why can't you just let it go? It was infuriating. None of them seemed to care about what had actually happened. They were only interested in maintaining the illusion of a happy family. The final straw came when Zach found out Mom had been trying to contact him directly. She called his office and left a message with the receptionist, claiming she was worried about Amelia's behavior and needed to speak with him urgently. When he told me, I was livid. She's trying to manipulate you, I said, pacing the living room. She knows she can't control me anymore, so she's going after you. Zach nodded, his jaw tight. Don't worry. I didn't call her back. But Amelia, this isn't normal. You need to protect yourself. He was right, of course. I decided then and there to cut off contact with my mom completely. I blocked her number, her email, and even her social media accounts. It was painful, but it was necessary. Dad, however, was a different story. His apology had been sincere, and he hadn't tried to manipulate or guilt me like Mom had. After weeks of agonizing over what to do, I finally agreed to meet him for coffee. When I walked into the cafe, he was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of him. He looked older than I remembered, his face lined with worry. Amelia, he said, standing as I approached. Thank you for coming. I nodded, sitting down across from him. I'm not here to make peace with the whole family, I said bluntly. I just want to hear what you have to say. He nodded, taking a deep breath. I messed up, he said simply. For years, I stood by and let your mom and siblings treat you unfairly. I should have stepped in. I should have defended you. But I didn't, and I'm sorry. I studied his face, searching for any hint of insincerity, but all I saw was regret. Why didn't you? I asked. He hesitated, then sighed. Your mom. She's always been the stronger personality. It was easier to go along with her than to stand up to her. But that doesn't excuse what I did, or didn't do. I want to do better, Amelia, I want to be a better father to you, if you'll let me. His words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I'd felt invisible, unimportant. Hearing him acknowledge my pain and take responsibility for his role in it was more than I ever thought I'd get. I don't know if I can trust you yet, I said honestly, but I appreciate the apology. That's all I can ask for, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We talked for a while longer, and for the first time in years, it felt like we were really connecting. But as much as I appreciated his effort, I knew it wouldn't change the dynamic with the rest of the family. When I got home, I told Zach about the meeting. He nodded, pulling me into a hug. I'm proud of you, he said. I'm proud of me too, I replied, and for the first time, I truly meant it. Cutting off my family wasn't easy, but it was the best decision I'd ever made. For the first time, I felt free to live my life on my own terms, without their constant judgment and negativity. And that, more than anything, was worth the pain. The day of the engagement party dawned bright and warm, with a soft breeze rustling the leaves in our backyard. Zach and I had been planning this for weeks, a small, intimate gathering with the people who truly mattered to us. After everything with my family, I needed this celebration to feel real, supportive, and free of judgment. For once, I wanted a space where I could simply be happy without second-guessing every word or gesture. Zach was already outside setting up when I walked into the kitchen that morning. He had strung fairy lights along the fence and was arranging the mismatched chairs and tables we'd borrowed from friends. The backyard, though modest, looked magical. How's it coming? I asked, leaning on the doorframe. Almost done, he said, turning to me with a grin. I think we're going to pull this off. I smiled back, feeling a rare sense of calm. I'll get started on the food. By noon, the house was a whirlwind of activity. My best friend, Claire, arrived early to help with the final touches. Claire had been my rock through all the family drama, never hesitating to call out their toxic behavior or remind me that I deserved better. She brought a tray of her famous lemon bars, setting them down on the dessert table before turning to me with a mischievous grin. Do you think any of your cousins will bring drama? She asked, tying an apron around her waist. Hannah might, but she's more likely to defuse drama than start it, I said. She's the only one I invited. Smart move, Claire said, grabbing a knife to help slice the veggies. Let's keep this as peaceful as possible. By mid-afternoon, the backyard was transformed. The tables were covered with simple white cloths, dotted with vases of fresh wildflowers I'd picked up from the market. Zach had set up a small speaker system for music, and Claire's husband, Matt, was manning the grill. The air smelled like barbecue, fresh flowers, and summer, a combination that felt oddly healing. The first guests began to arrive around 5 p.m. Our friends came in twos and threes, carrying bottles of wine and dishes to share. The energy was light and warm, a far cry from the tense, stifling atmosphere of my family gatherings. People laughed, hugged, and mingled, filling the space with a hum of genuine connection. Hannah showed up about an hour later, looking slightly nervous. She was wearing a pale blue sundress and carrying a wrapped gift. I hope I'm not too late, she said, stepping into the backyard. Not at all, I said, hugging her. I'm so glad you're here. Hannah had been my lifeline to the family during the fallout. She'd stuck her neck out for me more times than I could count, even though it often put her in awkward positions with the rest of them. I was grateful to have her here, in a space where she could just be herself without worrying about picking sides. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere grew even more relaxed. People shared stories about Zach and me, laughing about our quirks and reminiscing about the early days of our relationship. At one point, Claire took the microphone we'd set up for toasts and launched into a hilarious recounting of the time Zach had accidentally locked himself out of our house in his pajamas. And Amelia, Claire said, raising her glass, thank you for showing all of us what strength and grace look like. You've been through so much, and you're still here, still shining. Here's to a beautiful future for you and Zach. The crowd cheered, clinking glasses as my cheeks burned with a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. I glanced at Zach, who was smiling at me like I was the only person in the world. I told Claire to keep it short, he teased, leaning over to kiss my cheek. Guess she didn't get the memo. It was perfect, I said, squeezing his hand. The night reached its peak when Zach stood to make his toast. He wasn't usually one for public speaking, but he'd clearly thought this one through. He talked about how we'd met, the challenges we'd faced, and how proud he was of the life we were building together. His words were simple but heartfelt, and by the time he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the backyard. After the toasts, the party settled into a comfortable rhythm. Some people danced under the fairy lights, while others gathered around the fire pit Zach had set up earlier in the week. I found myself sitting with Hannah and Claire, sipping wine and soaking in the moment. "Do you think this is it?" Hannah asked, gesturing to the party around us. "Your new beginning?" I thought about it for a moment before nodding. "Yeah, I think it is." Hannah smiled, clinking her glass against mine. "You deserve it." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter, music, and warmth. As the last guests trickled out, I stood in the middle of the backyard, looking at the empty chairs and the strings of lights swaying gently in the breeze. Zach came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Not bad for our first party," he said, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Not bad at all," I agreed, leaning into him. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. The ghosts of my family's judgment still lingered, but they didn't feel as heavy anymore. I had found my people, my real family, and they had shown me what unconditional love and support truly looked like. This was my new beginning, and I was ready to embrace it.